this is Matt Troyer, and in this video we are going to take a look at the Annuity Decision Report and how it can help you make better decisions. So before we get started though, I want to do it in context of what I like to call kind of the three main reasons you even have patents, right? And so, you know, and then we're going to kind of bring this back in as we start looking at this and saying, hey, can we support those three reasons to keep or to abandon this patent based on what I'm seeing in the Annuity Decision Report? And the first thing is does it protect your patents or your roadmap, right? So that's the important one. Secondly, is it a defensive patent, right? So maybe it's not protecting anything currently, but it's a good defensive patent. It blocks my competitors from enhancing their products in some way, or perhaps maybe I can use it as a vehicle to extract a license or something like that. And then thirdly, is this instrument that we can use to monetize patents, right? Whether it's sales or licensing, but also on a cross-licensing deal. And so we'll take a look at that in context. So the first thing, let's open up a patent. And then notice here there's a reports button, right? So the Annuity Decision Report is new. So I'm going to click that and load the Annuity Decision Report. And just as a quick review, we've got several gadgets here, right? This is just the tombstone data on the patent and then a summary. You've got a family timeline, prosecution timeline, claims analysis, rejection. So we're going to actually look from here up in this example. But just continuing, we've got citations, the age and class, some benchmarking for survivorship. Do like patents, do they survive or at what rate, right? Based on where we're due. And then a bunch of other benchmarks. These are 12 unique benchmarks. You can drill into each one and it will pull up a chart for each one of those things and you can kind of see where your patent falls along. But I'll do the benchmarks in a different video. But in this one, let's take a look at how these things all go together. So let's start with the family timeline. So here I can see that I filed this, or this were my patent, right, in 5 different jurisdictions. Nothing too concerning here. We can see it was examined 3 times, which is actually a good thing, right? So Canadian, Chinese, and U.S. examiners all granted this thing, which means the claims, have a pretty good chance of surviving. The only thing that concerns me is this European. It is not yet granted, right? And so we can see that this thing was filed 2017. I'm doing this basically 5 years later in 2022. It's a little bit normal. Your European Patent Office can have that. So we want to find out what's the issue with this. Perhaps the European examiner found some prior art that we need to be concerned about, which could invalidate all 3 of these, right? So that's the first thing we're going to look at there. That's one of the things that points out. Now let's go to the prosecution timeline, all right? So this is what happened during the prosecution event. And we can look at these red sort of any triangles, and they're showing the rejection. So we can see we had a non-final and then a final, but between those we had responses. So in this response date, we amended the claims and provided the remarks document in both cases. So we know these claims were amended, but we did get our NOA and then eventually grant. So we know we had to do some things in prosecution. So the question is what? So look, this is the claims compare. So this column shows what was filed, and then the next column shows what was granted. So we filed this nice, tidy little claim, and of course what was granted was this longer claim, and you can see by the green underline that this was substantially narrowed. Well, it was narrowed in light of some prior art, right? They said this thing was not novel, and it was not non-obvious, right? Or it was non-obvious. And so we didn't get it. And how do we know that we had those kind of rejections? Because the reverse rejection gadget here shows that. Now in this case I have it defaulting in mine to reverse because I selected that last, but I can flip it to forward because that's a different analysis. We're really evaluating claims in context of the prosecution history. So first thing I'm going to do is remember to lock this window and this window because this is the actual patent, right? We can put the claims in focus, and here's the report, and I don't want them to be overwritten as I drill in. All right, so I've got those locked, and I want to go take a look at this 102. So this examiner felt we were not novel over this Spectrum patent. And so the first thing we want to know is to open up the Spectrum patent and take a look at the claims here. Now, it's kind of nice to say side by side, but we want to read these claims, or maybe another independent claim, but read these claims in context of what you filed. And if they claimed substantially what you filed, then you probably cannot practice this invention, right? Because this is a, if you know the parable of the three-legged stool, they've got the three-legged stool and you've got the enhancements for the arms and the back and the rocking chair. And so while they can practice this piece, because they've got this piece, which is essentially we're saying, the point is to not read these. I'm scanning them, they look sort of similar, but the devil's in the details. And so the question is, can we even practice this invention? And the answer may be no. Okay, the answer may be no, because the kind of core up here is already claimed by another patent. But that doesn't necessarily mean this isn't a valuable patent. Why? Because in the case of like the three-legged stool paradigm, I hope you know that, and if not, look it up. It's really worth reading. Are these enhancements sufficient enough that I could do several things? Maybe we could horse trade, because both companies could potentially expand their market by doing a cross-licensing here. That's the first thing. Now, of course, keep in mind if they don't claim because remember, in the rejection argument, the examiner used what was taught in the spec, not was claimed in the claim, to build his or her novelty argument. So they may not have claimed it. You do want to check the family to make sure that if there were a bunch of continuations, maybe a different continuation did claim it, because I want you to remember that every single patent, in this case it just has one family member, but every single patent in the family has the same specification, different claims, and so any one of those patents could have been used to make that argument. But in this case, it only has one, and also that's kind of interesting. It's only filed in the U.S., which is sort of important, because even if we could not have practiced this, it's only in the U.S. They have not filed in the other countries. When remember, we have protection on the enhancement in Canada, China, and presumably this grants several countries in Europe once we validate. So that's an interesting piece. But the other thing that I think what we're getting out of this thing is, well, it may not be that bad. I mean, I'm just looking at this number, 7 million series. This is a 9 million series. So we know this is older. Look at the expiration. It's 2024. I'm doing this video in 2022. So I've only got 2 years before I can practice the core invention, whereas the enhancement is going to last for, let's take a look at that. I think it was 2035 on this one. Yeah, 2035 right there. And so it may not be worth just to wait. I mean, if this is a great invention that's going to make the products better, then go ahead, kick it off in China, Europe, potentially Canada, wait in the US, and then launch the product in the US with the new features in 2 years. And then the competitive advantage is that over open field is that they can't practice the enhancement, right? Because they don't have the patent on the enhancement, which is what you've got here. So kind of tying these together, I mean, I hope you kind of see that these gadgets are here for a reason, right? And they help you evaluate your claims in context of the prosecution, which in my view is the only way to evaluate claims. I mean, without this information, you're reading this claim and going like, yeah, that's helpful. We use that, heck, our, maybe was this an oil thing? I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. But our group in China uses that, and it's a really big deal. But now we have a lot of it. When we say we're keeping this, we're saying, look, we can use this in the U.S. in only 2 years. It's a really nice incremental improvement over the core, and we're going to be able to have a nice advantage over our competitor for 11 more years. So I would keep this one, assuming this is a good improvement, right? Now, if it's not, and if it's so narrowed that it's just never going to be used, then we can see that right here, and it's a good candidate for abandonment. Okay, so that's about all I have today. I just wanted to point out that you can't really look at all of these gadgets as a single gadget. They work together and help you evaluate claims in context of the prosecution history. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you on the next one.